The year is 405 BC. On a cold mountainside outside Thebes, a man lies in pieces. No swords, no shields, no army. Just hands, teeth, nails. And the women who did this to him are now asleep in the dirt. They're not warriors. They're mothers, wives, daughters. This isn't a murder. It's a religious service. And it was approved by the state. What happened on this mountain wasn't an accident. It wasn't a riot that got out of hand. It was a calculated, state-sanctioned descent into hell. It was a ritual so terrifying, so antithetical to the logic of Greek civilization, that for centuries, historians tried to dismiss it as mere allegory. They told us these stories were metaphors. They lied. What happened next was one of history's most buried secrets. A system of control that used ecstasy as a weapon and turned the human body into a vessel for the divine grotesque. Today, we're breaking down how the most civilized society in history used sex, wine, and ritualized violence as a pressure valve to keep their world from exploding. This isn't pure myth. This isn't the sanitized Disney version of Olympus, where gods sit on clouds eating grapes. This comes from records buried in the archaeological strata of Corinth, from the terrified whispers recorded by the playwright Euripides, and from the fragments of pottery, the Kylix cups, that depict scenes we are still hesitant to display in modern museums. We are talking about the Maenads. We are talking about the Bacchanalia. We are talking about the sexual and violent rituals of Dionysus. But here is the twist. We often view these rituals as parties, ancient raves that went a little too hard. That is a modern mistake. We need to reframe our understanding. This wasn't leisure. It was infrastructure. The Greek city-state, the polis, was a machine of rigid logic, straight lines, and absolute patriarchal control. But every engineer knows that if you build a machine with no exhaust pipe, it explodes. These rituals were the exhaust pipe. They were the engineered pressure valves of a society that repressed its citizens to the breaking point. Hit the like button if you've ever wondered how the most civilized society in history could endorse the most barbaric acts imaginable. Today, we aren't just telling ghost stories. We are dismantling the engine of the ancient world to see the blood that greased the gears. To understand the ritual, you must first understand the cage. Imagine Athens in the 5th century. We picture philosophers debating in the agora. We picture democracy, but zoom out. Look at the macro structure. This was a society of extreme surveillance and segregation. For women, the city was a prison. They were confined to the gymnasium, the women's quarters. Their lives were dictated by fathers, then husbands, then sons. They were legal minors from birth to death. The atmosphere of the city smelled of dust and laws. Every movement was scripted. Every marriage was a transaction. The machine of the state required total submission to function. But the Greeks understood human psychology better than we give them credit for. They knew that you cannot cage a human soul forever without consequences. If you trap steam in a boiler, you must install a release valve, or the metal will shrapnel. Dionysus was not just the god of wine. He was the god of the release valve. He was the loosener. The rituals we are about to describe, the madness, the orgiastic processions, the tearing of flesh, were not acts of rebellion against the state. They were the state's way of ensuring the rebellion never happened. It was controlled insanity. It was an admin-approved chaos. And for the women of Greece, it was the only time the cage door opened. Let's zoom in. The microview. We need a face to put on this history. Let's call her Elara. She is 22 years old, the wife of a mid-level merchant in Athens. She has 2 children. She has not left her house in 3 months. She is not a fanatic. She is a cog in the domestic machine. She weaves wool. She manages the slaves. She keeps her head down. But inside Elara, there is a kinetic energy building up, a scream trapped in the back of her throat that has been growing for years. The festival is approaching. The Great Dionysia, or perhaps the rural Lani. The specific calendar date matters less than the psychological weight of it. Elara begins to feel the shift in the city's atmosphere. The strict lines of the social grid are blurring. Her husband, usually a tyrant of domestic protocol, becomes uneasy. He knows that for a few days, he loses his property rights over her. He knows that the god is coming to claim his due. Elara isn't just going to a party. She's being conscripted into a spiritual war. The preparation is not about vanity. It is about the erasure of the self. She packs a basket de lignin. Inside, hidden under fruits and ivy, lies the phallus, a simulacrum of life, wrapped in the foliage of the wild. This isn't pornography to her. It is a sacred object, a key that unlocks the door between the civilized world and the primal void. She bathes, but not to be clean. She bathes to wash away the identity of wife and mother. She dresses not in the structured chiton of the city, but in the fawn skin, the nevrys. It is animal hide. It smells of the curing process, a musk that signals a return to the hunter-gatherer state. She takes up the thyrsus, a staff tipped with a pinnacone. It looks like a weapon. It will become one. This preparation phase is crucial to understanding the machine concept. The cults of Dionysus were not disorganized mobs. They were highly structured organizations, the Asoi. There were ranks. There were leaders. There were fees. The state monitored this. It was a kind of mass-produced mysticism. Elara joins her group, her Thiassos. These are women she knows. The baker's wife, the aristocrat's daughter, but as they don the skins and wind the ivy into their hair, the social hierarchy dissolves. The ivy is toxic if eaten in large quantities, a mild narcotic. They begin to chew the leaves. The protocol has begun. They are no longer citizens, they are becoming vessels. The machine is switching gears from production to destruction. The silence of the house is left behind. Outside, the drums are starting. A slow, rhythmic pounding that syncs with the heart rate, designed to induce a trance state before they even reach the mountain. It is important to note the specific sensory deprivation and overload employed here. This was ancient psychological warfare aimed at the self. They fasted. They drank wine that was often laced with herbs, mandrake, poppy, perhaps ergot. The preparation was a chemical and biological hacking of the nervous system. Elara feels the edges of her vision blur. The familiar streets of Athens, the geometry of the walls, start to look alien. This is the targeted dehumanization necessary for the ritual. To do what must be done, Elara must cease to be human. She must become a force of nature. The city laws do not apply to wind or fire, and tonight, she will be both. The intermediary, the priestess leading the procession, checks the group. They are tagged, not with numbers, but with the symbols of the god. They are cleared for departure. The gates of the city loom ahead. Passing through them is the point of no return. Behind them lies civilization, order, and repression. Ahead lies the wilderness, the mountain, and the madness. The transition is absolute. The procession begins. We are now in the public spectacle phase. Before the secret rites on the mountain, there is the parade through the streets. This is the phyllophora. To the modern eye, this scene would look like a fever dream of indecency. Giant phalluses, carved from wood and painted red, are carried on carts or hoisted on poles. The crowd roars. This is the sensory overload. Flutes scream, the owls, a double-reed instrument with a piercing nasal sound that cuts through the air like a knife. Drums beat a rhythm that is intentionally disjointed, designed to confuse the brain's pattern recognition systems. Elara walks in the procession. Men in the crowd shout obscenities. This is astrologia, ritual abuse. It wasn't harassment in the modern sense. It was a theological requirement. The belief was that by shouting filth, you warded off bad luck. You shamed the demons away. It was a verbal purge. The air vibrates with laughter, screaming, and the thudding of feet. It is a wall of sound that physically hits you in the chest. The visual style is chaotic bright colors, swaying statues, the smell of burning incense mixing with the sweat of thousands. But watch Elara. While the crowd cheers, she is detaching. The public spectacle is just the crust. The core of the ritual is yet to come. As the sun sets, the procession reaches the edge of the cultivated land. The men stop. The tourists stop. The casual worshippers stop. This is the descent, the private horror. The women, the Maenads, continue. They leave the lights of the festival behind. They begin the climb up the mountain. The atmosphere shifts instantly. The laughter dies. The flute player changes the tune to something lower, more guttural. This wasn't improvised cruelty. It was infrastructure. The state had designated specific zones for this activity. They knew that if these women didn't ascend the mountain, they might burn down the city. The climb is grueling. It is dark. The path is treacherous. The physical exertion combined with the fasting and the wine creates a state of exhaustion-induced euphoria. Elara's legs burn, but she doesn't feel it. The group moves as a single organism, a hive mind climbing toward the peak. Here is the twist. You expect them to reach the top and perform a graceful dance. You expect poetry. Instead, you get the sparagmos. They find a clearing. The intermediary brings out the animals, goats, sometimes bulls. In the myths and the dark whispers of history, sometimes unwanted children or men who strayed too close. We must be careful here. History is written by the victors, and the enemies of the cult accuse them of human sacrifice. While archaeological proof of human sparagmos is debated, the asterisk belief asterisk in it was the source of the power. Elara, the quiet weaver, drops her staff. She falls upon the animal. It is not a clean kill. It is a tearing. The omophagia, the eating of raw flesh. The machine requires blood. The logic is terrifyingly simple. To touch the god, you must consume the life force directly. No fire, no cooking, no civilization, just tooth and bone. It is the ultimate rejection of the culinary civilized world. The night deepens. The temperature drops, but the women are sweating. The ritual has moved from physical violence to psychological dissolution. This is the descent into the subconscious. In the flickering torchlight, Elara is no longer Elara. She is a Maenad, literally the raving one. The Greeks believed that Dionysus didn't just attend the party. He entered the body. This isn't theos, the root of our word enthusiasm, but meaning the god within. But this wasn't chaos. It was policy. The societal machine used this state to reinforce the norm. How? By showing the horror of the alternative. By letting women become monsters for a night, the state proved that women needed to be controlled the rest of the year. The ritual justified the prison. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy of patriarchal control. Look at them, the men would say, safe in the city. Look what they become without us. The intermediary watches. She is the only one who remains somewhat sober. She is the technician of this machine. She ensures the frenzy doesn't spill over the edge into total self-destruction. She guides the chanting. The text of the chants fragments of which survive speaks of the bull eater, the roaring one. They are calling for the destruction of boundaries. For a few hours, the strict laws of incest, of violence, of propriety are suspended. Pause for a second. If you got one night a year with no laws, what exactly do you think you do? Imagine the soundscape. Not music, but a dissonant screaming, a tearing of cloth, the breaking of branches. It is the sound of a society vomiting up its repressed demons. Elara screams. She screams out the frustration of her arranged marriage. She screams out the grief of lost children. She screams out the silence of the loom. The mountain absorbs it all. The mountain is the sponge for the city's pain. And then, the twist of humanity. In the midst of this blood and noise, there is a moment of profound stillness. The human twist. Elara stops. She looks at her hands. She sees the blood goat blood. She hopes. For a split second, the trance breaks. She sees the other women, her neighbors, looking like ghouls. She doesn't recoil. She doesn't cry. She feels ... light. The weight of her existence has been lifted. The monster has been fed. This is the catharsis. It proves that the ritual works. It isn't about being evil. It's about emptying the vessel so it can be filled with duty again tomorrow. She wipes her hands on the grass. The savage beast recedes, leaving the human woman behind, trembling and cold. The sun rises over Mount Cithaeron. The machine of the night powers down. The transition back to reality is harsh. This is the hangover of the soul. The women gather their things. They bury the remains of the sacrifice. This is a crucial part of the protocol. Destruction of evidence. What happens on the mountain stays on the mountain. They wash in the mountain streams, shivering. The cold water shocks them back into their bodies. They are no longer Maenads. They are Elara, the weaver, Xantippe, the baker. They fix their hair. They put the pins back in. They assume the posture of submission. The walk back to the city is silent. There is no music now, just the sound of sandals on stone. They re-enter the city gates. The guards watch them pass. There is a look of fear in the men's eyes. This is the power exchange. For one day, the men fear the women. They know what these women are capable of. They know that the submissive wife is a mask, and beneath it lies a wolf capable of tearing a bull apart with her bare hands. Elara returns to her home. Her husband is waiting. He does not ask where she has been. He does not ask what she did. He knows better. The machine of the household restarts. She sits at her loom. The rhythm of the weaving begins again. Clack, clack, clack. That there is a difference. The tension is gone. The pressure valve has worked. The city is safe for another year. The madness has been metabolized. This wasn't just a Greek phenomenon. The Romans tried to import this machine, but they misunderstood the user manual. In 186 BC, the Bacchanalia affair rocked Rome. The Roman Senate, a machine of even stricter logic, saw these rituals not as a safety valve, but as a conspiracy. Livy, the historian, describes the panic. They believed the cult was a state within a state, a criminal organization. The Senate passed the *Senatus Consultum de Bacchanalibus*. They didn't just ban the party. They hunted the attendees. Thousands were executed. Why? Because Rome demanded total assimilation. They couldn't tolerate the private horror. They couldn't allow the machine of the state to be paused, even for a night. Greece managed the madness. Rome tried to murder it. And in doing so, Rome drove the madness underground, where it festered into something far more dangerous. The reaction of the establishment defines the ritual. In Greece, the playwright Euripides wrote the Bacchae as a documentary of this tension. In the play, King Pentheus tries to stop the ritual. He represents the law, the order, the logic. He climbs a tree to spy on the women. He becomes the voyeur. And what happens? His own mother, blinded by the god, pulls him down. She thinks he is a lion. She tears his head off. She marches back to the city carrying her son's head on a pike, thinking it is a trophy. This isn't just a story. It is a warning from the ancients. Do not try to legislate the irrational. Do not try to suppress the animal nature completely. If you try to cage the beast without a key, it will eat your children. The system of the polis learned this lesson. They institutionalized the cult to save themselves from it. They built a temple to the madness so it wouldn't burn down the courthouse. This leads us to the archaeology of the secret. How do we know this? We jump to the modern day. Excavations in southern Italy and Greece have unearthed the Orphic gold tablets, thin sheets of gold foil found in graves, giving instructions to the dead on how to navigate the underworld. They speak of a cycle of sorrow. They speak of escaping the wheel. These initiates believed they were different. They had touched the madness and survived. And then there is the Villa of the Mysteries in Pompeii, a room frozen in time by volcanic ash. The frescoes on the walls depict the initiation of a bride into the Dionysian Mysteries. We see the flagellation. We see the terror. We see the revelation. It is a comic book of trauma. The paint is still bright red Pompeian red. It looks like fresh blood. These images are not erotica. They are instructions. They show a woman cringing away from a whip. They show a mask being held up to scare her. This is terror therapy. The ritual was a psychodrama. By inducing artificial terror, the cult inoculated the initiate against real fear. It was a vaccine for the soul. The machine processed the trauma of being alive and converted it into resilience. When we look at these walls, we aren't seeing perversion. We are seeing the ancient equivalent of a psychiatric ward. But instead of pills, they use drums, wine, and the collective hallucination of a god. Let's fast forward to a recent excavation. Archaeologists digging in the sanctuaries of Dionysus often find curious deposits. Pits filled with thousands of miniature vessels. Strange, articulated dolls with movable limbs. These are not toys. They are votive offerings. But look closer at the bones found nearby. Animal bones. Yes. But shattered, twisted. The evidence of the sparagmos is written in the calcium. It tells us that the violence was real. The breaking was real. This wasn't just symbolic. The ground itself remembers the frenzy. When you stand in these ruins today, amidst the tourists taking selfies, you are standing on a crime scene that was sanctioned by the government. You are standing on the exhaust vent of the ancient world. Consider the Maenad vases. These are pottery pieces that show the women mixing wine. But look at the eyes of the figures painted on the clay. The artist captured the ecstasy. The heads are thrown back. The necks are exposed. In Greek art, women are usually contained, modest. Here, they are exploding outward. These vases were the propaganda of the cult. They were the flyers handed out to say, "Come to the mountain. Be free." They are the physical proof that the Greeks knew exactly what they were doing. They designed the madness. They fired it in the kill. They exported it. This brings us to the uncomfortable truth of the machine. We like to think we have evolved past this. We have laws. We have therapy. We have Netflix. But look at our own rituals. Look at the mosh pit. Look at the riot. Look at the frenzy of a Black Friday sale. The machine is still here. The need for the sparagmos, the tearing apart, has not vanished. It has just changed form. We don't tear goats apart on mountains anymore. We tear people apart in the comment sections. Before you judge the Greeks, scroll through any comment section after a scandal and ask yourself if we're really that different. We tear celebrities apart in the media. The impulse to destroy, to lose oneself in the mob, is a permanent feature of the human operating system. The Greeks were just honest enough to build a temple for it. We reached the end of the line. The philosophy. Civilization versus barbarism. The Greeks defined themselves against the barbarians. The barbarians were the ones who didn't speak Greek, who drank their wine undiluted, who lacked self-control. But the Dionysian rituals revealed a hypocrisy. The Greeks were the barbarians. They just scheduled their barbarism. They'd put it on a calendar. This is the moral punch. A society is not measured by how polite it is in the daylight. It is measured by what it does in the dark. It is measured by how it treats the powerless, the women, the slaves, the animals, when the lights go out. The rituals of ancient Greece were a pressure cooker that kept the patriarchy from exploding. It wasn't mercy. It was strategy. It wasn't chaos. It was maintenance. Let's return to Elara, the weaver. She died 2,000 years ago. Her bones are dust. But her experience, the feeling of being trapped, the need to scream, the desire to lose control, is eternal. She represents the part of us that hates the machine. The part of us that wants to run up the mountain and tear the sky apart. The Greeks gave her a way to do it. We, in our sanitized, safety-proofed world, often deny that part of ourselves. And perhaps that is why we are so anxious. We have the steam, but we have welded the valve shut. If this story unsettled you, good. History is not meant to be comfortable. It is meant to be a mirror. We have looked into the most deranged sexual rituals of ancient Greece and found not just perversion, but a desperate, bloody attempt to cope with the human condition. If you want to explore more buried secrets of the ancient world, more stories of the machine and its victims, hit that subscribe button. We are just scratching the surface. The archives are deep, and the ghosts are waiting to speak. I'm Noctis History, and remember, the mountain is always there, waiting.